My parents used my college fund to pay for my brother's wedding. I didn't fight it until they asked me to do the bridal makeup. I showed up with a degree in spite, not beauty. Liana, honey, Aubrielle would love for you to do her makeup for the big day. Isn't that so thoughtful? My mom said over the phone, her voice syrupy sweet. I was quiet. Liana? She pressed. I'll do it, I said, my tone even. I'll make her unforgettable. That was the moment I knew how I'd respond to them stealing my college fund. I never expected life to be fair. But I also never expected my parents to smile in my face while throwing my future out the window. I'm 25 now, but this started when I was 22. I'd taken a gap year after community college to work, build my makeup portfolio, and save before transferring to a top-tier art school. Makeup wasn't a hobby, it was a career path. I had been freelancing since I was 17, slowly building a reputation in my hometown of Asheville, North Carolina. My older brother Dean had always been the guy. Charismatic, loud, a classic firstborn golden child. He coasted through high school, barely got through college, and somehow landed a job at a real estate firm where charm mattered more than skill. He stayed at home, rent-free, into his mid-20s, while my parents proudly introduced him at every family gathering as our future real estate mogul. Me? I was the daughter with quirky interests. When I painted murals on my bedroom walls, I was making a mess. When I practiced SFX makeup and turned myself into monsters or fantasy creatures, I was wasting time. No one ever outright insulted me, but the silence was worse. Disinterested. Dismissal. Even when I landed regular freelance work and started saving money, my parents seemed to view it as a phase. But I knew what I was doing. I had a plan. I was accepted to SCAD Savannah College of Art and Design. I was going to make something of myself in a way that didn't require a desk job or a corporate ladder. Tuition was steep, but thanks to years of small family gifts, babysitting money, and a 529 savings plan my grandmother started before she passed, I was almost there. That college fund was my parachute. Or so I thought. One Thursday evening, I came home from work at the local art supply store and found my parents at the kitchen table. They were in an unusually good mood. My mom had her special wine glass out, and my dad was organizing paperwork. We've got some wonderful news, she said, practically glowing. Dean and Aubrielle are getting married at the Grove Park Inn. Aubrielle, for context, was my brother's girlfriend of maybe a year. She was sweet enough, in a polite and polished kind of way. She had that look my mom adored: long blonde hair, delicate features, that southern pageant composure. I always found her a little beige. But whatever. I wasn't marrying her. I smiled, confused but trying to play along. Wow. That's a pricey venue. How are they pulling that off? My dad said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. We're using the college fund. It's just been sitting there. I froze. Excuse me? Well, my mom jumped in, you haven't used it, and Dean's wedding is important. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment for our family. They said it so casually. So gently. Like they were doing me a favor by giving it away. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even argue. I think part of me had always known that money didn't really belong to me, not in their minds. It was a safety net I had convinced myself I'd earned, but to them, I was just holding it until Dean needed it more. So I nodded. Said nothing. And I walked away. For the next 6 months, I worked harder than I ever had. I booked bridal gigs, Halloween parties, and low-budget theater productions. I said yes to everything. I started a YouTube channel. I posted my work on Instagram. Tutorials, before and after shots, transformation videos. Slowly, I started to build a name for myself. I applied for scholarships and enrolled in an online arts program through the University of Georgia. Not my dream school, but I could afford it on my own. Every time I bought a cheap textbook or logged into a glitchy student portal, I reminded myself why. I never confronted my parents about the fund again. What was the point? I knew how the conversation would go. You weren't using it. You can always go back to school later. Dean's wedding was a family priority. No one ever says outright who matters more. They just act like it's obvious. Then, about 3 months before the wedding, I got a call from my mom. She was chipper. Liana. So, we were talking to Aubrielle, and she said she would love for you to do her bridal makeup. She just loves your work. Isn't that so sweet? I paused. You want me to do Aubrielle's makeup for the wedding? Yes. Of course we'll pay you. It'll be so special to have you involved. Dean thought it was a great idea, too. For a few seconds, I considered hanging up. Then I said, I'll do it. There was silence on her end, maybe a little surprised. Wonderful. But inside me, something had shifted. If they wanted me to beautify the bride they stole my future for, I'd show up. But not as the quiet, grateful daughter. I spent weeks preparing. Not with revenge in mind, not yet, but with professionalism. I ordered new brushes, organized my kits, planned out a look that would photograph well and last all day. It was subtle, elegant, and classy. I was going to do a flawless job. But I also started thinking about power. How much power people assign to being nice. Being helpful. Being a good sport. Maybe that was my problem. I had been too quiet, too agreeable. The day of the wedding, I showed up at the bridal suite at the Grove Park in my most professional outfit, black slacks, a neat blouse, my kit rolling behind me like armor. The room was a Pinterest board come to life. Pale pink robes, champagne flutes with names written in gold script, fresh peonies everywhere. Aubrielle hugged me like we were lifelong friends. I'm so excited you're here. Your work is just incredible. I smiled. Thanks for having me. We got to work. Her skin was flawless, her features delicate and easy canvas. I applied a dewy base, sculpted her cheekbones, gave her a soft smoky eye with a touch of shimmer. It was perfect. Too perfect. So I made a tiny adjustment. Not hampere. Just subtle misdirection. On one eye, I used a warm bronze. On the other, a cool taupe still within the same palette family, just enough to create asymmetry under certain lighting. Her lashes were slightly uneven, one curled a little more than the other. Her lip liner? A fraction too dark. In person, she looked radiant. But I knew the camera would catch the flaws, the uneven balance, and the undertones fighting each other. I wasn't ruining her look. I was injecting imperfection in a day built on pretense. The best revenge, I've learned, is not loud. It's the kind that doesn't reveal itself until the photos come back. After the ceremony, I slipped out quietly. I wasn't there to celebrate. I had done my job. 3 days later, I got the call. 3 days after the wedding, I got the call. It was my mother, and she didn't even start with a hello. Liana, she said, her voice sharp and tightly wound. What exactly did you do to Aubrielle's makeup? I was sitting at my desk in my tiny one-bedroom apartment in Durham, surrounded by invoices, palettes, and an untouched cup of tea that had gone cold hours ago. I leaned back and closed my eyes. What do you mean? She looks weird in the photos. Her eyes don't match, her lips look off, and her skin looks oily in half the pictures. What happened? I thought you knew what you were doing. I let the pause stretch long enough to make her nervous. I did exactly what I was asked to do. I did her makeup. Well, something's wrong, she hissed. Aubrielle is really upset. She thinks people are going to think she did her own makeup. I wanted to laugh. What was the crisis? That people might believe she didn't hire a professional? I'm sorry she's unhappy, I said simply. You all asked me to do a job. I showed up and did it. My mom paused. You didn't do something on purpose, did you? There it was. The crack. The suspicion. I didn't confirm anything. I didn't deny it either. What reason would I have to do that? I said evenly. She hung up without saying goodbye. I didn't hear from them again for 2 weeks. At that time, one of the bridesmaids, Cassidy, tagged me in an Instagram story that went mini viral. It was a close-up photo from the wedding with the caption, "When the bride treats her MUA like the help, and the MUA has a PhD in petty." She didn't mention me by name, but I was tagged in the story. I guess she had picked up on the vibe that day. That single story gained me over 15,000 new followers. People started commenting on old posts. This one? Makeup assassin. Queen of passive-aggressive revenge. Suddenly, I was booked out 6 months in advance. Brands started reaching out. I got DMs asking for consultations, collabs, and mentorship. It wasn't all good, some trolls, some Dean's friends commenting things like I was jealous, but I was too busy to care. I'd built something. And ironically, I had my parents to thank for it. About a month later, my dad emailed me. Subject: "Can we talk?" It wasn't long. Just a short message. "Liana, we've been thinking about everything and want to talk. Your mom is upset. Aubrielle is still unhappy with the wedding pictures. Dean is hurt. I think it's time we have a family conversation. We're still family, after all. Dad's still family. The same family that drained my college fund without blinking. That handed over my future for a 10-hour party and matching table linens. That then turned around and asked me to work at that same party for a discount." I didn't reply. Not immediately. I sat with it. Let myself feel the ache of what I always knew but had refused to accept. There was no version of me they would ever champion unless it looked like Dean in a dress. And it never would. Aubrielle eventually posted a carousel of wedding photos. The caption was a quote from a Bible verse about love and forgiveness, which felt especially pointed. But the photos spoke louder. The lighting made the asymmetry in her eyes jump out. Her smile in half of them didn't reach her eyes. In others, her foundation looked like it had melted under the summer heat, even though it hadn't. In every one of them, she looked stunning, just not flawless. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't malicious. But I was done being the family footnote. Cassidy messaged me later and said, "I think she knew. Deep down, I think she felt something wasn't right. But she'll never admit it." I told her, "It doesn't matter. That was the last favor I'll ever do for them." And I meant it. Months passed. My business grew. I moved into a better apartment, bought better gear, and started mentoring younger makeup artists in the area. I held workshops. I did volunteer work with burn survivors and helped teach confidence through appearance restoration. I found purpose not in revenge, but in proving I could still succeed on a path that no one believed in but me. Meanwhile, Dean and Aubrielle went on a honeymoon to Tulum, and when they came back, my parents tried to arrange a family dinner. I declined. Not with drama. Just a simple, "I'm busy." Because I was too busy building a life they didn't get to take credit for. Thanksgiving rolled around before I heard anything again. I got a group text from my mom, "Dinner at our place, 4 p.m. Turkey, pie, the usual. Hope to see you. Family isn't the same without you." Red heart. I read it twice. Family isn't the same without you. Not "we're sorry," or "let's talk," or even "can we make things right?" Just a blanket expectation. An open invite to sweep everything under the rug. I didn't respond. That evening, I went to a Friendsgiving in Raleigh. One of my clients turned friends hosted a beautiful dinner. She was a drag performer, and the guest list was filled with artists, stylists, and creative types from every background you could imagine. We ate cranberry chutney out of mismatched bowls and passed a bottle of cheap red wine around until it was empty. Someone played the ukulele. Someone else cried about a breakup. I helped clean up and left with half a pie and 3 new followers. It was the first holiday I'd ever spent outside my family. And it didn't feel like I'd lost anything. If anything, it felt like I'd finally stepped into my own life. Around Christmas, my father tried again. This time, he called. I didn't pick up. Then he left a short voicemail, rehearsed. Hey, kiddo. I know you're still mad at us. And you have every right to be. I don't agree with how it all went down, either, but it's time to let it go. Dean and Aubrielle are expecting. We want the family to come back together. Please, Liana. Think about it. Expecting. A baby. Another moment I'd be expected to celebrate for them. Another opportunity to perform the role of the good sister. Maybe they'd want me to do the maternity photos. Paint a nursery. Be the godmother. All while being fed scraps of recognition. It wasn't rage I felt. It wasn't bitter either. It was fatigue. Tiredness from the years of quietly swallowing the reality that in my family, fairness was a favor, not a right. That love had conditions. That I was supposed to earn their support by becoming something I wasn't. I deleted the voicemail. Aubrielle had a baby shower in early spring. I found out through Facebook, where my mother had tagged me in an album titled, Celebrating Our Growing Family. I wasn't there. Of course I wasn't. But there I was, still being included digitally like a cardboard cutout propped up in the background of their curated lives. One of the photos caught my eye. It was Aubrielle, sitting in a chair stacked with pink presents and ribbon diaper cakes. Her smile looked thinner than I remembered. I zoomed in on her face. Her makeup looked off. She had clearly hired someone else for the day, maybe a friend of a friend. It was too heavy for her face, too much powder, eyebrows a few strokes too dark. I wasn't proud of the satisfaction I felt, but I let it sit for a second. She didn't look happy. But more than that, she didn't look like me. And maybe that mattered more than anything else. Over the following months, the distance between us became normal. The family thread grew quiet. I didn't reach out for birthdays. They didn't comment on my posts anymore. But I was doing fine. More than fine. My Instagram has 75,000 followers. I got an email from a streaming show based in Atlanta. They needed a lead makeup artist for a horror miniseries and asked to see my portfolio. I booked the job. It was the kind of opportunity one used to dream about when I was up late practicing prosthetic wounds on my arms. The night I signed the contract, I thought about my grandmother. She was the one who started the college fund. She believed in me when no one else did. She bought me my first makeup kit when I was 13 and told me I had hands that could build worlds. I visited her grave the next day and sat quietly. I did it, I whispered. She wouldn't have cared about revenge. But she would have understood justice. 2 weeks later, I got another email. This one from Dean. Just the subject line made me tense up. Let's clear the air. I opened it. Liana, I know we haven't spoken much since the wedding. Things got weird. I think we both know why. I was hurt at the time. Maybe I still am a little. But Aubrielle is due in 2 months, and we'd really like for our child to grow up knowing their aunt. Family means everything to us. Maybe we can meet for lunch sometime? Talk it out? It's time we move on from this. Dean, it wasn't cruel. It wasn't hostile. But it was empty. Nowhere in it was an acknowledgement of what had actually happened. No mention of the college fund. No, we were wrong. Just a vague plea to move forward like the past hadn't happened. I didn't reply. It was a strange moment of clarity, realizing I didn't need to win the fight. I didn't need to yell or make them see what they did. I didn't even need an apology anymore. What I needed was space. Distance. My own narrative. I was no longer trying to fix something broken. I was simply walking away from it. Dean and Aubrielle's baby, a girl named Marin, was born that summer. I found out the day she was born because my mother sent a photo via text. No caption. Just a picture of Aubrielle in a hospital gown, flushed, holding a swaddled infant, Dean grinning beside her. It was the first time I'd heard from her in months. I didn't respond. 3 days later, I saw that same photo posted on Facebook with the caption, "Our perfect granddaughter. Welcome, Maren Grace. Aunt Liana, we can't wait for you to meet her." I hadn't been invited to the hospital. I hadn't been asked. I was just expected to show up. Expected to fold myself into the celebration of a life I had no role in creating, but would forever be claimed by name only. I muted the group thread. That fall, my business officially outgrew my one-bedroom apartment. I signed a lease on a small studio space in downtown Durham. It wasn't flashy bare brick walls, tall windows, and enough room for 2 chairs, a full lighting setup, and a small consultation lounge, but it was mine. I painted the walls myself. Set up the lighting rigs. Installed shelves for my kit. The day I hung up the sign out front, I stared at it until the light changed on the street corner. Degree in Spite, Makeup Studio by Liana Hale. Some people thought the name was funny. Others asked about it, smiling knowingly. But I never explained it, not really. Let them wonder. The real revenge began in slow, measured steps. I knew Aubrielle had kept tabs on my work through mutual acquaintances, passive-aggressive likes, and the occasional scene on my Instagram stories. I never blocked her. I wanted her to see. The horror miniseries I worked on was nominated for a regional award in makeup design. My studio made a write-up in a local lifestyle magazine. A bridal blog reposted one of my transformation reels, calling it visionary. And then, the first real blow landed. One of my former clients, a prominent wedding planner based out of Charlotte, invited me to be a guest speaker at a vendor showcase. It was a big deal in the southern wedding industry. Planners, photographers, florists, even stylists came from around the Southeast to network, pitch, and book gigs. It was my first big public platform. The event was held in, of all places, Asheville. At the Grove Park Inn. I almost laughed when I read the event address. Full circle. I accepted. I arrived in a sleek black jumpsuit, my makeup immaculate, my hair in soft waves, carrying only a portfolio and the confidence of someone who no longer needed to prove herself. My session was packed. A few aspiring artists recognized me from Instagram and asked for pictures. After the talk, several vendors handed me business cards. One mentioned she was rebranding her luxury bridal agency and wanted to collaborate on styled shoots. I nodded. Smiled. And then I saw Aubrielle. She was at a nearby booth with a woman I recognized from their wedding as a florist, I think. She wasn't working. She wasn't networking. She was just there. Watching. Our eyes met. She gave a little wave. I smiled and turned away. Later, someone told me she had tried to get her makeup done for the event, but had a scheduling conflict with the artist she wanted. Apparently, she tried to book with one of my ments. The mentee declined. Politely, of course. A few weeks later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. It was from my mother. Inside was a letter not handwritten, but typed, and a small, laminated copy of a newspaper clipping. It was from the Asheville Citizen-Times, and it featured my Grove Park talk. The letter was brief. My mother wrote, "We saw this. Your father and I are proud of you, even if we didn't always say it the right way. Dean and Aubrielle are too. Maren is growing so fast. Maybe it's not too late to start over." It was signed simply, "Love, Mom." I read it once. Then again. And then I folded the letter neatly, placed it back in the envelope, and put it in the bottom drawer of my desk under old receipts and empty notebooks. I wasn't angry anymore. But I wasn't coming back either. 1 year after that wedding, to the exact week, I was contacted by a bridal magazine in Atlanta. They wanted to do a feature on unconventional artists redefining the wedding beauty scene. I was one of 5 people chosen. The photo shoot was scheduled for early fall. They asked me to bring in a real couple to model the looks I created. I chose two women I'd worked with the previous spring, former clients turned friends who had eloped after being rejected by one of their families. Their love was bold and beautiful, filled with color, strength, and quiet rebellion. I painted them like queens. The feature went viral. Vogue Weddings reposted it. And that same week, I got another email from my mother. Saw the magazine. You looked beautiful. If you ever want to bring someone home for the holidays, we'd love to meet her. Or him. We just want you around again. I stared at the message for a long time. There was no apology. No true reckoning. Just more quiet suggestions that everything could be smoothed over if I stopped caring so much. But I didn't want to be smoothed over. I wanted the truth to matter. I never replied. Instead, I walked into my studio that day, flipped the closed sign to open, and began prepping for a bride whose parents had threatened to cut her off because she refused to wear white. As I blended foundation into her collarbone, she asked, "You ever get tired of weddings?" I smiled at her in the mirror. "Not the ones I get to choose." She laughed. Outside, the October light was soft and gold, filtering through the leaves. Inside, I was exactly where I needed to be, not under anyone's thumb, not holding on to their approval like a starving thing, but whole. And finally, quietly, I was free.